Really like that.
All right, I call this committee of the whole to order.
Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I would call roll, but I see everyone is here, so I don't need to. All right, we're gonna start with the Plan Unit Development Fund District 2022-0-05. Since we have a special guest here that we haven't heard from in all of this, Judge Crane, I would like to give her an opportunity to speak to us and the audience and share her thoughts.
Where do you want me to speak from? Up there by that microphone?
Wherever you would like, we
I
can
have
hear
to
you
warn
fine.
you when you let me access to a microphone.
Are you gonna do karaoke?
Bill wants that. May I move that down here?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's no cord on it. You cut the cord? I now
More
know
ways
why
than one.
my inn is, the pub is empty. Half my customers are sitting right there. I have been a quiet partner in all of this particular situation that we have here. And it occurred to me that it was about time that maybe you would like to hear from the landowner who has probably been a citizen of Mentor on the Lake longer than you are older, and you, I don't know about you. But what I would like to tell you is the road and how we got to the deal that I made with Mr. Summers, which I felt was for the benefit of the Mentor on the Lake. This particular corner was a gas station. It was a pure oil station that my late father and his business partners were using. I inherited, but besides being an inherited homeowner, property owner in Mentor on the Lake, I'm a sailor. And for years and years and years, I have coveted the concept of the view of Lake Erie and the value that Lake Erie has to our particular county in Lake County, Ohio. And I've owned this property. Mr. Yeager was my father's tenant. And as he grew older and as there were family drama on the Yeager property, I began getting complaints and threatened lawsuits because he was not fixing the boats as he was supposed to do. And as a matter of fact, there were guests at Riders Inn who spent the night, who spent hours and hours bitching about the lack of quality repairs to boats on Mentor on the Lake. And then I was sailing on a boat that was called SWAT. It stood for Sailing Women Are Tough. And when I would put the tiller between my legs to begin to sail it, it also stood with, there are children present, right? Sex with a tiller. And it was a type of boat that Yeager had, and our competition was called Flying Sorcerer. And he destroyed that boat. And that was kind of the little feather that tipped me over to find out why he was not taking care of this property. I am on first name basis with the service department in Mentor on the Lake. And when Jim finally quit and abandoned the property and stuck me with, I think it was 40 boats at the time.
Very close, yeah.
We found an obscure little provision in the law that if you weren't the person that contracted for the boat to be put on the property, it was considered littering. And working with the city, we got rid of most of the boats. And I think the ones that are back there now are people that had flooding in their basement that needed a place for their boat, and somebody else. In other words, I was trying to be a good neighbor on Mentor on the Lake. I was sitting, I acquired the Ampets Hall and tore it down when they moved. And then when I acquired the 7-Eleven Dairy Mart, I don't know what they called it, I had a church that didn't have a home. So I put the Jubilant Christian Church in there, and they prayed for me. And boy, do I need it. Okay, so I am trying to be a part of Mentor on the Lake, even though I don't live here. I probably own property here longer than I have in Willoughby Hills. One of the problems that I have in Willoughby Hills is my late mother, as she was getting older and older and older, couldn't take care of our property next to Squires Castle. And I kept hiring, and I hired a man by the name of Thomas Reed Smith, who lived on Salida in the duplicate, all right. And Tom said, oh, you have to be careful with Mentor on the Lake. It's a wonderful town. Don't screw it up. I said, I'll try not to. Well, one of the problems I had with my mom is she wanted to stay in Willoughby Hills, but she didn't want to mow the lawn. And she couldn't live alone. And she needed a quality of home that would be what she was used to, but still in Willoughby Hills. That didn't exist. We gave a piece of property called Romish Fields to Willoughby Hills, but they put recreation on it rather than a place for seniors at that time. And then she passed away. Well, according to the zoning, I put an HVAC guy there because that was my zoning, and his name was Carl Brewster, and he kept the inn going fine, as you well know, the air conditioning. And Carl committed suicide, not on the property. But that property also had another very serious event, as you well would know, about the bartender that was killed. I have to tell you that the man who killed her came to Riders Inn first, looking for me. I don't know why, but we had an overnight guest who was a police officer and wouldn't let him in the inn. And then that night, something happened. So my roots are very deep in, if I may say, our city. My dream at one point was to put a hotel there with the shape of a oarboat so that everybody could see the beautiful lake, and incorporate the roller skating rink, because that would be a year-round activity as opposed to just the summer, which is what Geneva on the Lake has and other people have only 3 months out of the year. And so I started approaching, because I'm now in the hospitality industry, I started approaching Hilton, Marriott, Motel 6, Blue Wave, all of the different hotel chains that were interested in having a property that would have a view. And each one of them said, we're not interested in Mentor on the Lake. We don't want to be a part of Mentor on the Lake. And I asked why. And I was told it's a business decision. So a man named Mario Sintek came to me and said, I want to fix up that. I want to use that property. I said, Mario, it's not zoned for a bar. I don't want it to be a bar. I have a bar. You don't need another one. So he entered into an agreement to fix it up so it would be pretty for the entrance to our city of Mentor on the Lake. And then Mario's got into trouble with the city. And I got called in to go to a lawsuit because he was storing heavy equipment.
Yes.
And things of that sort. And I said, Mario, this is not good for our city. And I was sitting in his parking lot, looking out at the lake. And the breeze was coming. And I kept looking at that darn sign that said Mentor Beach Park. And I thought, how in the heck Did they get that for just a fire engine? You know that story, don't you? And I thought, this is the view that my mother would have liked. I never listed the property with a realtor, but I started getting developers who would come to Riders. They would have a hamburger and they'd say, is Judge Crane there? And I went, oh boy, here we go. Because when I'm Mrs. Crane, I'm dealing with freezers. But when I'm Judge Crane, it's usually property or free legal advice. I must have had 10 developers who came to me, who offered a whole lot of money. And like a princess who likes to have suitors, I interviewed every single one of them. And I will tell you, he wasn't the biggest offer, he wasn't the best offer, but Greg Summers was one of the nicest men that I have met, and he shares my dream of using the view on Mentor on the Lake. I am a homeowner, and I have a responsibility to the people on Park. They own those houses, and those are their castles. And having commercial there, having that type of traffic there, to me, is not fair to the kings and queens that live on Park Avenue with their little homes. At one point, when Dan was selling Biggie, we tried to get all of the homeowners on that section together to try to make a uniform arrangement there. And there is a couple that own the apartment houses there. That's their retirement. They didn't want commercial. They wanted their apartments. Dan had a problem with his zoning and the lots, they overlapped and that sort of stuff. And he found a pastor that bought his Mr. Limo and that. So my property is there. And my vision with Greg is to turn it into homes for families to come to Mentor on the Lake, high income homes, not bad ones. I've looked at his property that he's built in Geauga County, and they're gonna have a view. And they're gonna be able to have access to the Mentor part. It should be Mentor Beach Park, Mentor on the Lake. You should really make them put that on the sign. That's my suggestion. And that would bring families and people to share what Mentor on the Lake has, that Willoughby Hills has, that Kirtland has, which is a small community that know each other. Mentor's too big. I work and live in Paynesville now. Paynesville's too big. But I want to bring families that have a view into Mentor on the Lake. So I request of you to please improve the zoning on this. It's commercial. I could put somebody in there that you guys wouldn't like, just so I would have some income from it. I don't want to do that. I have gone without income for a while on that property to find a place for my mother to go. That doesn't have to mow the lawn, that doesn't have to do it, that's high quality, that has that view. Does any of you have any questions of me? Are you speechless?
No, not at all.
All right.
Don't get me fired up. I could talk a long time.
Does anyone in the audience have questions for her?
Greg works with me. Greg's back in the back there. Hi, Greg. Bill, do you have any questions? Yeah, Bill has been in my barn and never asked me about my property. Did you know I owned it?
Sure.
But you never mixed beer with business, did you?
Well, if I'm there socially, that's one thing. If I'm there for business, I consider it. But yeah, I have
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I have a comment for you. I don't disagree with anything that you said. The only thing that I think that might be slightly different is I would like to see something other than high density units on that property. I agree, the view is spectacular, it's a shady Meadow Rose, the park. we'll see what can be done with that. But myself and other citizens have had discussions about options for that property. That
The
might be,
reason that it has to be denser than you want is the quality and the type of housing that is adjacent. You can't take little houses like that and put up one or two big mansions
sure,
and make it fit within the fit. That's for you guys on Salida. You can have that high density, that stuff in your finger going on.
yeah, yeah.
All right. What we wanted to do, and Greg, if I'm on the line, you stop me. We wanted to do alternative housing. We want home ownership. We want it so that you don't have to take care of the lawn. We wanted to be able to sell it as Mineral on the Lake View property. And we want the quality of that to raise up, because eventually the ice cream store is gonna go and that area is gonna go. And you've got commercial further down that has a buffer of apartments. I know the church property is kind of a pimple in the middle. Did I say that word? Am I on the record? Strike that, please. That's a term used, in that, and I know about the box store there. But I'm zoned for box store. And I don't want them to turn around and come to me and say, break the deal with him and do it, because I don't want to do that. But I would love to see property like Greg is going to build. It has to be denser for it to be affordable. But the deal that Greg and I have is half the price that the church is asking. So he is going to be a good citizen in building it. And I understand about the driveways. I think you do too, don't you, Greg? And I would love to see it look like chips a little bit. Maybe I'll even donate a spinnaker to put by the street. But that's what we want for that corner. So it'll be a step. Small little houses, something for mother, something up to Salida in that area, and keep the commercial where it already is. So they can walk to the store at $6 a gallon of gas. That's what Mineral on the Lake has that's better than other communities. You can walk to a store without making a big hike, and maybe even have a three-wheeler or a bicycle, a two-wheeler, that sort of thing. But that's what we would like to do there, right, Greg?
Correct.
Okay, you understand? All right, I gotta tell you all, I've had COVID-19 3 times. And it went into my ears. And so it's called Meniere's disease, and Meniere's is a French word for sailing. Go figure. So if I can't hear you, you're gonna have to scream at me.
I'm very accustomed to speaking loud. Ask the mayor, ask the council. They know. Have you been down Salida and seen Monterey Bay?
Yes,
Okay, that's the kind of density we were anticipating if there were going to be residents on your property. That
and
street,
imagine Monterey Bay next to Park Avenue.
my
Would
point
you buy
is,
it,
my point is more green space, multi-level, architecturally more accustomed than what you're seeing straight across the street. We haven't seen his drawings yet to know what he's
I
thinking
thought they
of.
did, Greg.
I've showed drawings. I don't want to get into a debate, but it doesn't look anything like across the street. We're building brand new, beautiful new construction. I've showed everybody renderings. There's no point in debating it. I've showed everybody, and you know the type of quality that we're gonna build there. That's a 2.9 acre site. Monterey Bay, what, was 20 or 30 when they built it? You can't compare those two, but
Without a debate, Monterey Bay is how many per acre?
How many acres is Monterey Bay?
It's 6, Monterey Bay has 6 units per acre.
How many acres does it have?
It was 37.
How many?
37.
How many do we have? 2?
2.7.
Why should it be
It-
more?
it's not about the number of acres, it's about the density per acre.
It doesn't become cost efficient. Am I right in that?
Yes, I think everybody knows the type of quality we're committing to build there. You're comparing two different sites. I mean, every nice city has diverse types of housing, urban infill sites with higher density. Look at downtown Willoughby. I
I'm
mean,
sorry, Mr. Summers, you said you weren't gonna debate.
no,
Okay.
I'm speaking to Elaine, and it's dialogue, it's not a debate, it's stating facts.
And we're saying it's density, don't talk to us about the quality and the structure, talk about the density, please.
I've showed everybody the plan there, and I don't think that's an unreasonable use for the site at all. I think it's fair to say it's the highest and best use there. It would be attractive, we'd be.
I'm gonna rein this in. It's only questions for Judge Crane. We're not gonna have a discussion amongst the rest of you.
I'm sorry, I have a question as well.
Can I go talk, stay closer to him?
You absolutely
I
can.
don't like it.
Okay, can the front of the buildings face the street so that we can have a more attractive view? I was concerned that the backs would be on Andrews and the backs would be on Lake Shore. And so it won't be as attractive as you walk down the streets, because we want to make it a very attractive community.
We proposed a site plan like that, but people didn't want to see driveways.
But can we do the driveway in the back of the property and
Wait, let's talk about theme. And then the details regarding what you're talking about. You don't have a view if your back is to the view, right? Unless you got eyes in the back of your head. Now, I'm a mother, I have eyes in the back of my head.
Right.
Do you? Yeah, see, okay, but you guys don't have it. But Greg knows the sale point for his condos are going to be the view, right?
Correct, and I mean, it's gonna be landscaped and buffer from the street.
And being, you have to understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to transition to the different levels of income in a community. We don't want everybody wealthy. We don't ever want everybody very poor. We want to have different types of people to make a community, which is what Mineral on Lake is so far ahead of the rest of Lake County. Does anybody disagree with me?
I disagree.
I have a question. How does what you're proposing introduce different types
I gotta
or
jump in,
different?
I'm sorry.
There you go.
It's high density, high quality, I'm assuming moderate to higher price.
Yeah.
So how does that change the character of your?
Nothing, it adds to it, it's
How
what's
so?
here.
How so?
Well, right now you have low income apartments. And so those people have a place to live. Then you have inexpensive small housing in Mineral on the Lake. And as people move up the economic ladder, what do they have to buy? To stay in Mineral on the Lake, to stay there, to have a place that they get seniors like some of us. Me. They don't want lawn, they need something they can afford, and then very expensive property. So a community is vibrant if it has all those different levels. And that's what we're trying to build there, aren't we?
That is one point, but if you're smashing them into a small section so it can be profitable, as a buyer, I don't know that is going to, it's not going to entice a certain person.
As a
Like that.
buyer, you have to let the man who knows how to do property and develop it. It would be much better to have somebody who is quality, who has built condos all over this area to know what the market wants right now. And the market right now is changing. I mean, at $5 a gallon for gas, are people gonna be able to afford housing?
So the other thing is when you've changed that to get that density you need, the houses are going to be closer to the right of way. And then you also have to allow room for a landscape and buffer. So to me, how do you set all that within it's a wall, or, I mean, it's, to me, it seems that there is a reason to have certain setbacks to allow certain amounts
If
of
you
green space to
rezone it
allow
to-
for comfortable living.
If you rezone it for condominium, as Greg goes through the design feature with the zoning department, we won't have to have these meetings where each one of you will have to, your zoning people will work with him to make it quality.
They're
and you don't-
stretching, they're shrinking that to accommodate this. They're not making it better. They're shrinking it to make it more dense, which is something that everyone
It's
in
not better
leadership in
now.
Mentor on the Lake has acknowledged that we do not need. So
It's not
that,
better now. Have you driven past my corner?
yes, I have, but it does, just having something there doesn't mean it's better. When you're changing rules to make something more dense than
But
everyone
it's-
up there
It's
has
the
agreed.
only
that we
view
do not
in Mentor on the Lake.
I understand that.
It's special.
I do understand
You can't see you can't, Mentor isn't gonna build a house on their part. They're not gonna build a structure. It's the only one that you will have a decent view. And Greg's not gonna build anything that's gonna avoid the view, are you?
Yeah, well, that doesn't answer.
Could be pretty.
I saw that. I agree with you.
You can
That's
have a beautiful front on the street and in the back, put the driveway in the garage. and
If
you-
it's
and you have this
possible,
beautiful
people do
deck.
it, or, but if it's possible, right?
You can make it so much better. You want to put the backs on the streets and the view instead of the beautiful fronts.
That is after we get the opportunity. He's not going to spend the money on an architect to get it done, I don't think, are you? Until we get permission to upgrade this corner from what it's zoned for now, which is junk and noisy and not very, I mean, you want a gas station in there? You want a guy that's doing HVAC?
I got to see your little boutique hotel there.
Yes.
I can't get anybody interested. I am trying and trying and trying. And it would give, as again, a very nice place within walking distance without high care, lawn care. And that's what we, like, I keep telling Greg over, for my mother, and he's gonna have to do a seance to bring her back, but that sort of thing. Because Willoughby Hills didn't have it, and she wanted to stay there. Yes, somebody else can, they're wearing my favorite color.
Yes, Judge, you mentioned before that was a pure gas station at one time.
How long ago was it? More than 30 years.
1952 to 58, and I know I don't have any signings left to give you.
No, is there, were the storage tanks removed from that site?
Yeah, it's fine. Greg, we did the environmental, didn't we? Yeah. it's all right. Yes, Bill.
First off, I, and most of the people here, are not completely opposed.
I'm not one.
We're not completely opposed to condominiums. They're reasonable. There's a lot of, I'm not gonna call it stupidity, I'm just gonna call it ignorance amongst everybody that participates about design and what's possible and so on. There seems to be, some people have gotten wedded to the idea that the driveway has to come in on the front of the residence. What are you, crazy? This is not a new concept. There are thousands of developments around the country. You've seen many we all have. We can accommodate a nice design, maximize units that view the lake. They won't all, because you just can't do that. There's two sides to the four sides, and they aren't gonna face the lake. But the real problem is the density. 35 units crammed in to, or now it would be, 35, 36 units, depending on the equation, which nobody on zoning or council has come forward and explained the equation for density. So we don't really know what's going on. But 36 is really high density.
Do we have in the zoning code of Mineral Lake, the percentage?
They are working on it tonight.
That's not the equation. The percentage is the percentage of what? Is it total acreage? Is it the amount of acres that could be covered by buildings? That's never been
Well,
defined.
you are talking to a property owner
I know,
and a developer that is coming to your city.
right.
Those are the people that have it. But if he walks away, I'm gonna hear it from Dollar General, and I don't wanna hear it from Dollar General.
We're dealing with Dollar General on two other sides right now.
I know. But
Anyway,
we have an opportunity here to build something that has to be cost effective, correct, Rick? Okay, have you been talking to the zoning people for is the word density?
density, but
Density
it's
that
not
you're
defined.
comfortable with,
It's not defined.
right? Have you?
Yeah, I've had extensive dialogue and there's been a thorough process with the city.
I think the question is a
Not
matter
true.
of trust.
We
Do
don't
you
trust.
trust him
No,
and you have to trust him?
I trust you.
All right.
I don't trust any developer because I'm a capitalist, they're capitalists, they're gonna maximize their profit. And obviously you say you gotta make money, you gotta have density and so on. I have a pretty good idea. First off, Summers is not condo builder. Greg has told me. Basically, they do apartments. Now, an apartment and a condo, how different, are when you rent one, you sell the other.
How many
But
condos have you built?
Developed a ton of different sites, diverse mix of single family condos, apartments, Billy apartments too, by the way. We're not just an apartment though, that's not true at all.
Well,
Would you
We
have
have
a
a very
little more
diverse
trust in
portfolio.
him because I'm with him?
No,
No?
no, I don't
Then I'm
trust
gonna
any.
sit on you and bounce.
Well, I don't that way. And
I'd
I'm
like to
gonna
see
come
that.
to you no matter what, so you can't get rid of me that easily. And I'm saying, the thing is, at 35 units, it's just too many.
Is that the number?
It's just too many. It makes no damn sense. You know, Monterey Bay is 6. There's a lot of numbers between, I think the new proposal is for 12 per acre, but we don't know what acres, because there's nobody been able to clarify that. Whether it's total acres or what's acres after multiplying by.
I'll go ahead and clarify that right now, because it is actually written in the ordinance, maximum density by dwelling type. The total number of dwelling units permitted shall be calculated by multiplying the total land area exclusive of public rights of way existing at the time of development plan is submitted by the number of dwelling units permitted per acre.
Okay, so the setback would be part of the right of way, wouldn't it? Mr. John?
No, the setback is not part of the right of way.
So
The right of way is X number of feet from the center of the
street.
road.
and how many acres, well, that's an important detail, but the point is, if we're up in the 30, 35, 36 units, that's really high density. If
It
As the
doesn't
planning-
sound like that's what he said.
it is what he said, because it's 2.9 acres according to Greg, you multiply it times 12, subtract a little for the setback from the street, you're up in the 33, 30, 40, 30 range. If as zoning and planning had proposed, but was shot down by city council, if it was dropped to 10 per acre, now you're down.
I'm gonna clarify that too. Planning and zoning voted on that and made it 12. They cast the vote on that and they agreed to keep it at 12.
So that still works out to about 35 units, which is really, if I were to go to a more sensible number, I think you get a lot more public support.
You're talking about 12 per acre and you're talking about a basic design in your mind.
No, I'm
Because
talking
this
about the
diagram-
renditions
wait,
that
wait,
I've seen.
I listen to you.
Okay.
The diagram you showed were townhouses like this. You could do some interesting architectural things with yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, so that everybody gets a view and it kind of goes maritime. But unless you allow some way for this man to make a living, he's not gonna do that. He's not gonna do that, and he's gonna walk away from that, and it's gonna leave me with property that I have, people that I've already said no to coming back. And we need, this is the prettiest piece in Mineral Lake.
Absolutely, no question.
And the Maximers are on the corner to the left. When I was teaching school, I had so 2 kids in the classroom, and one of them always used to raise his hand to go to the restroom because he could get out of class. And finally, the little boy behind him said, my maiden name is Ramesh. Miss Ramesh, let him go, please. Yes, ma'am.
So it would be nice to understand with Greg Summers, because I know he's done quite a few developments, correct? Right? Okay. And he said he's done more than just apartments and condos and single family. So he's done quite a bit of development within Ohio, right?
Northeastern
Ohio,
Ohio.
yeah.
Right. Does he have a development that he's done that is similar to what he wants to do here?
I was thinking about the
Density-wise.
one over Chart,
Yeah, and the one east of the creek we did on the old Johnny Cake there, we personally lived there. And it's very similar type, it's right on the bend, on Johnny Cake, there's a waterfall in the front, so it's the creek. The town development that we built, really beautiful units.
And how many are within an acre? What's the density there?
Yeah. Been 10 years since I built it, but I think the site is 6 acres and I think we have 36 units, maybe 38 units like that. Some of those are undevelopable. But again, a lane site's what's called an urban infill site. You couldn't build a hotel on 2 acres. You need to buy the roller rink, everything. So just to clarify on that, infill sites like around downtown Willoughby and they're transitional sites. They're not, you don't have a lot of acreage. Like there's infill sites in Sugar Falls, there's infill sites in Willoughby. This is a small site in an urban area with different uses all around it. So you don't have 30 acres like the condos on Slida. This is a totally different. Infill sites are, in nice cities all over, and they're higher density, but they're attractive if you do them, if you develop them the right way.
Oh, I mean, I don't disagree with that.
I
There's
just,
some in Willoughby that I think are beautiful.
no, I just want to clarify, because it's
You know.
a lot, we're investing a lot into that site. I mean, it's in our interest to make it really nice, so.
Any more?
Sure, I'm still here. Number one, we don't really care what Summers is investing. All we really care about is what did the city end up with? What's the impact on us? I said before, 12 per acre is very high density. I'm a builder. I've never built condos, but I've built a lot of houses and kitchens. And I've already worked some of the numbers on, I know what condos are selling for. I don't know exactly what you're asking for the property, but I can make a wild guess and build that in. You don't need to put 35 units in there to make some pretty good money. Unless, I mean, if you got to double your money in a year or two, that might be a little tougher. I'm usually pretty good about making a more reasonable profit. I can make 18, 20, 25% a year. Rosie, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, maybe Greg is not. Maybe they feel they have to make a lot more money than that. But there's a lot of numbers that will produce a profit. But the density is quite a bit less than 35 on those 2.9 acres. It's, to me, right now, it's about, I really don't care. We've got the ugly old roller rink, Mario's bar, the ugly old roller rink, which something could be done with that. I don't want to destroy it. But we
Actually,
don't need to go out and line up on the edge of the street with these things, just because we've got some other old buildings that do.
you
That's
realize the
crazy.
roller rink and the bar have one wall between them.
I know. Been in both of them, I patronized, I don't know if the roller rink's open now, but I was wondering what it
The
was.
roller rink is part of the history of Maryland Lake.
And we want to keep it. And there are things that can be done to bring that history forward, and I'm part of the local
Theme
history.
is
group.
there. right?
Right.
You bring up a very good point, and that is the architectural theme, I think is so important, because your corner can really set the stage for how we want Men on the Lake to be.
Sure, with
And
the
I would-
entrance to the city,
And I would
or
love
the
to,
heart of the city.
Yeah.
and I would love to see the roller rink do a new facade to match what beautiful stuff you put on that corner and see it continue. That
Well,
would
we
be
can't
wonderful.
get it yet.
But just
Mario
to see
will
that
talk to
picture.
Mario doesn't talk to me, he got pissed him off.
Okay,
He won't talk to anybody, he's that. But we need to walk before we run.
We need to start in the right direction. And the high density development is not the right direction. We'd be happy with beautiful condos, design, architectural, view of the lake, so on. But we gotta get down quite a bit from 35 on that. If you can't make money there, I have 2 other developers ready to go.
None of them have ever called.
And I haven't gone that far with them. I said, here's the deal. Blah, 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 blah.
I have a commitment to this young man.
And that's fine. I'm just saying,
Because-
if he backs out, if he can't make some money, I've got 2 backups for you.
I don't think he's backing out. He's gone this road with me long enough. Right, Jack?
You're right, and I think it's important for people to realize too, with this PUD lane, that, you know, it has to be supplemented with a development agreement with the city, and they have to approve our aesthetics and architecture. You're not reading, this is an overlay, so if somebody else were to ever come back and try to do a PUD, it has to have a development agreement, a development plan, the city has to scrutinize it, the architecture, the site plan. You're not just giving me a blanket pass to do what I want. They're part of the code is a development agreement that spells out all these terms. There's a lot of controls. I mean, I know everybody's acting like there hasn't been due diligence done with this new PUD code. It has to be approved and supplemented with an agreement, scrutinized, and the architecture, the site plan. I mean, this isn't just a.
That's all well and good, except it's all about the density. We have no.
Okay, he
doubt.
was still
You can
talking,
make
so
it
don't
beautiful.
interrupt him.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
And I want to add one more thing, though. We talked about rentals in good faith. We went off that, even when you made the comment that you're an apartment owner yourself. We're trying to act in good faith too. I told you I grew up a mile from here. We want to do something that we're proud of too. I'm not an out of town guy. We went off the rentals. We want to do a nice community here. I've tried to show good faith too. So I just want to make that known.
And even if I sell it to him, Greg will be, I will be part of it, won't I?
Absolutely.
Once the pub is locked into this density, then the rest is details, which are important.
Well, we're
you
dealing
have
with the
blown
laws
by
as
the
stands
most
now,
important
right?
feature, Which is the density.
We're not asking you to change the zoning law. That's what it is now, whatever, the
No, there is
12.
no zoning for this now. You are
What's
asking.
R2, is it R2?
It's a new district, Elaine.
It's
It's
B2.
a
B1 or
PUD,
B2.
so
What?
it's an overlay district that you would apply under. new
So it's a
district.
new one?
Yes.
Okay. So you have to please allow the governmental system to go. You've been heard. They have heard you, correct?
Yeah,
And now we have an example with us, and we are cooperating. We are not, I'm here,
You are.
and he's here. Even though I have to go to that. All right.
It seems like everybody is open to architectural review, because I think that would appease a lot of people. I think you're open to it, I think you're open to it, just so that,
That's
and
part
I
of the
think the
law.
neighborhood is,
No,
the
I-
beauty, having that architectural review would be paramount for easing a lot of people's.
I apologize that I'm kind of conducting this meeting. If you guys.
no,
wanna send me home,
you're
then-
doing a fantastic job. Would you like to sit here?
So, and I'm not just directing it, but from what I'm understanding, from what I'm doing to review these other meetings, this PUD does not just affect your piece of property. Right. So that's the other part we're gonna have an issue with.
Right, it affects.
It affects more than just that piece of property.
Yeah, but the city would have to agree to apply the PUD to other properties. It doesn't just blanket zone other properties.
No.
If somebody came in, they'd have to come up with a proposal. And, you know, if the city felt that it was appropriate and fit based upon all the things we're discussing, it could be applied. It doesn't just you can't just do it everywhere. They would have to determine whether they wanted it to happen there and whether it was appropriate and met all the criteria for it.
That's not how I understood it before, that's all.
No, I
When I
agree.
heard
So,
it before.
so to clarify, the PUD would only apply to any property once they put in a business development plan and applied it to planning and zoning, who would first have to approve it, then all of council would have to approve it. So there's two bodies that would have to approve it before the PUD would ever go into effect,
For another piece of property.
for any piece of property, including his.
And I think it's important too, that again, there has to be, in addition, a development agreement.
Correct.
So the development agreement would specify, in addition to the 2 levels of approval, the development agreement would have to spell out the architecture, the site plan, all the setbacks, all the fine details of the development. So in addition to them approving that, the city would have to negotiate a development agreement that'd be a further level of scrutiny to make sure it's, was an acceptable and attractive development plan. The development agreement's important, and a lot of other cities that have PUDs make that part of it, so. I felt that's an important part of it.
There was a study. Are you all aware of the Madison study? Where they were turning farmland into housing developments and things of that. There was a study of about 1995, 96, done in Lake County. Because one of the questions was people felt that development was good for a community and things that farmland would turn into industrial or individual family housing and development. And one of the things that they talked about was the community did not thrive unless it had the ability to have people from all different economic walks of life have a place to stay. And that is something that I feel very, very strongly about. My generation, Woodstock. And one of the things that Greg and I talked about when I rejected some offers that were double what he offered, was that we wanted to have something that would fit. You all know, as I said, how special Manor on the Lake is. And I think Greg knows it, that's why he came to me. And we want to make it work, but he has to make, and he's had a lot more expenses today than he anticipated, right? Right? You've done the environmental study, you've done some of the topographical study already, and you don't even own it. In good faith. Okay? Anything, do you have anything of me? You have your chance to ask me, what did pin me against the wall.
I don't. You
I'll
and I
take
have
it away
talked,
from you if you don't do it.
you and I have talked several times, and I think you made a great point. Over the years, as far as commercial development down there, the best you've had is a gas station and HVAC. There's been nothing commercial that's been presented to you that you've said, this is a great idea.
There is only, going up and down, yesterday in anticipation of this meeting, I made a young man who's, gosh, 77, I have 8. Anyways, he said, where do you want to go? I said, I want to drive up and down between here and Ashtabula and back again and see what the development is doing. And if we don't get going, Ashtabula County is going to wipe us out. Because that's the development that's going on, and that's what people are buying. And Lake County is so much better. On the record again.
And that's to be able to cheap, cheap, cheap.
Yes, it is. And, but you should see what's going there.
I asked my sister lives up there. I could-
Elaine, I just hope that we get to look like this and not this.
I agree. I think that's terrible.
Horrible.
I agree.
And I think-
And you know our community now.
And he better not, if he did anything like that, there'll be a clause in it.
Thank you. Thank you.
He would like to see it.
Actually, I wanted to call it Crane's
Oh,
Corner.
okay, no, it's on.
That's what we thought.
And
Right? Crane's Corner?
Elaine, do you know right now that Manor on the Lake is 40% rentals?
41.
Well, this is not gonna be around.
Well,
we don't-
that's
we don't
what
talk in
before-
concrete.
Excuse me.
Yeah, you be quiet.
Before we,
Once the 19th Amendment gave us the right to vote, we can shut you up.
Judge, would you?
All the time.
before we began here, it was going to be a purpose. We have now changed this scenario.
I totally agree with you.
Thank you.
You haven't heard that from me at all.
Thank you. But I mean, when we look at other communities like Kirtland or Chardon, where they have 17%.
Greg knows the theme was my
Yeah.
mother.
So we're concerned about what it's gonna look like.
And so do you, right? On the record?
They're not gonna be rentals.
But we know that. We want to have.
And there is a provision. There are only 3 law firms in the state of Ohio that have those condominium laws. And one of the things in the condominium bylaws is going to be rental. Not rental.
Okay.
I'm dealing with it, I just have a condo in Fairfield Harbor. And, that was for my mother, and she would live there, because it was Fairfield Harbor, and she wanted to live there. All right, anything more? Gentlemen, may I be excused?
Thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank
To
you.
be returned. Thank you.
All right, back to business. This is the most I let anybody talk in one of my meetings, so you know.
She violated the 10-minute rule.
All right.
I'm going back to the end. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to go through ordinance 2022-0-05. I sent out the amendments that
Bye,
were made.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I guess I have to make a formal motion that you accept our application for rezoning.
All right. Everybody get a copy of the amended version. Are there any additions or corrections to those amendments? Any discussion on them? I'll go section by section. 1255.01, purpose and application. Is there anything in that section? Hearing none, we'll go to 1255.02. Is there anything in that section? Okay. So 55.03, development area. Anything in that section? Well, 55.04, permitted buildings and uses.
Want to take out the ability for somebody to build individual housing.
Can you say that louder, please?
They removed item 1, which is one family detached dwellings, which would be individual houses. Do we want to remove the ability for somebody to build individual houses versus other things? If somebody wanted to put in.
So the question is, do we want to leave out one family detached dwellings as currently listed there, or do we want to put back in one family detached dwellings? Discussion, anyone? Anyone awake?
I would rather see, I was just thinking, why would we not want to promote,
The least dense option? I agree with that.
yes.
Anybody else?
Trying to catch up to
Get
you.
you guys some Red Bull.
So you want to add back in one family?
That is the question currently.
That was so many.
That is correct. That was Mr. Busher.
What
was his explanation. I can't
He
remember.
felt that it would only be done on larger properties.
Correct, more than 2 acres, because otherwise they're not gonna be. They're from them back.
Like I said, why would you want to? Hearing the feedback from everybody in that, if we want sellable options, individual housing, I think is more sellable than a duplex or something like that.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to add back one family attached dwellings.
I'll second it.
Okay. So the motion is made to add back one family detached dwellings. Any discussion on that? Mr. Shaboo?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
No.
Mr. Bittner?
Aye.
Mr. Lunder?
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson?
Aye.
Mrs. Moore?
Aye.
And I will vote aye. All right, so one family detached dwellings is restored. Will be once we amend it officially. Council. Okay. Moving on, density regulations.
We're gonna have to add it back into table C, section C to the table as well.
Couple other places too, I believe.
Yes, so since we added back one family attached or detached, I mean, we will just go ahead and add it back to all. Okay. Maximum coverage. Again, adding back one family detached. Anything else in there? Development standards. Yes.
I'm all for removing that sentence that the planning and zoning wish to have removed that we put back in at the last meeting on the minimum setback from street right away. We all received this document this evening. It explains exactly why. That thing was taken from a different part of our ordinance for residential buildings. I think we should stay with this minimum setback of 35 feet. Without exception. Because even at that, I believe the builder or developer has an option to do an board of zoning appeals.
Isn't 35 feet already in there in section B?
It is, well, it is, but there was a sentence added to that.
Oh.
Then planning and zoning took it away and we put it back in at the last meeting. I get it, you know, if I were planning and zoning, I'd start looking at council. Why do you have to come to us for anything? Because you're gonna do what you want anyhow. So it's like asking somebody their opinion and do exactly the opposite of what they.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that because we have taken much of their consideration.
You're welcome to disagree with that, sir. That's your prerogative.
Yes, it is.
You
And
too.
and thank you. I will make it my prerogative.
And that's my opinion.
And they also wanted to take away the least dense option available, which we have just added back on.
Yes.
So we could ignore their opinion
But-
there.
But in this case, you know, we're not going to do the one family detached with this property.
But again, this doesn't apply to one
No,
property.
there's not.
Correct.
Right.
So I think with it, the way it states now, it is the minimum setback of 35, but it also gives the other option of doing an average which would be approved or not approved by zoning. Correct?
And council.
So there are some properties that maybe the 35 is just not applicable.
Take a lot for planning and zoning to get off of that 35.
Anybody else? Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made to stricken the verbiage, minimum setback from street right of way. For 20% or more, that part. I will second it. All right, Mr. Shaboo.
Aye.
You will strike it? Okay. Mr. Morse?
Aye.
Mr. Bittner?
No.
Wonder?
No.
Thompson?
No.
Moore?
No.
I am an aye. So it remains 3 to 4. All right. Anything else in that section? Okay, 1255.08, approval of development plans and development agreement. I had one correction to make from planning and zoning's portion. That was 1255.08B, review required, where it says no permit shall be issued for the erection or alteration of a building in the planned unit development overlay district unless there has first been filed with the commission preliminary and final development plans, comma, environmental assessment statement, that's the added part, and other data in accordance with 1242.025. Is everybody okay with adding that environmental assessment statement? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Can we do that before we add the environmental assessment statement into 1242.5?
Technically, they can ask for anything they want in the development plan.
Okay. Sure, I understood. Coming from our prior meeting.
So they'll review that part, that separate addition to 1242.025 separately. Okay, so we'll put that in there. Anything else in that section?
Are we gonna review it first?
What, review what?
Isn't that what the show wanted to do, review that section first?
No, well, she was asking whether we could add in environmental assessment statement in there without adding it into 1242.025 yet.
Okay,
Yes.
We can, because we can add.
I'll make the motion we have.
All right, motion made by Mr. Morris.
Second.
Who just seconded it? Thompson. Mr. Shaboo.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mrs. Moore.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Okay, that has been added in. Anything else? Anything else on the entire ordinance? Okay, again, this will just be on third reading again for the next meeting. It will not be voted on until the public hearing in July. All right. Moving on to the moratorium. Everyone should have gotten a copy of the edited moratorium based on planning and zoning changes. So first off, they established it as a 6-month moratorium rather than a 12-month moratorium. They struck every single whereas without exception. Provided a specific definition of small box discount store. Discussion. We'll start with the first part, going from 12 month to 6 month.
I'm sorry, you're gonna say, go ahead. Considering that this is based on, I think, North Royalton's ordinance, I would recommend you stay with the 6 month or 12 months rather. I'm not sure why planning and zoning changed it to 6 months.
They thought that we could resolve it within 6 months. Longer than that. Confident that we can do it.
If we can't get it done in 6 months, we can renew it. So.
Okay.
Anyone else? So 6 months? Okay. Portion regarding all the whereases.
I keep them. Other communities have written this ordinance based on this exact verbiage and it's upheld. As far as I know.
What else? So what you're saying is you want to second guess why we send it to planning and zoning if they're not gonna take their advice.
Our law
I mean, that's
director,
what you just told me.
I did
so-
say that, I did say, thank you for shutting my own. mouth. But in this case, this was written by the law director, who would have to defend or
Well,
reject it.
technically, it was written by somebody else's law director.
Well, yeah.
He just copied it.
He did, but he did a fine job of copying.
I don't think it needs to be in there, whereas I think this is really. Personally don't like, I mean, even whether you agree with it or not, I don't really want. I'm not saying.
I'd ask the law director his opinion.
Well, I know he was kind of pleased with them. He liked them personally, at least from my
I
discussion
think
with
so.
him.
He likes a lot of whereas.
but- I am going to propose that we keep all of the whereases starting at whereas in accordance with the Constitution of the State of Ohio and the pertinent provisions of the Ohio Revised Code, all the ones on down from there.
Yes.
And eliminate the others which are somewhat opinions more than specific facts. And stick strictly to the facts in this. That we wish to study current planning and zoning ordinances, which we're already started with. The impact of the stores, traffic patterns. That we're putting in this moratorium until those regulations are reviewed.
curiosity, sir.
Mhm.
You are opposed to leaving whereas there are current concerns about safety and security surrounding small box discount stores because of the often high incidences of crime and theft in and around them due to the lack of security. That's not opinion, I believe that is a fact.
We can strike that if you wish.
I think what we're doing right here is all that you need to. I don't think you need to add all that. This is sufficient enough to state that on the moratorium.
The more you give people to argue, the more opportunity we'll have to beat it.
The more you lock it down, the less opportunity they have to beat it.
You can argue, but you think it's safer. You say there's a moratorium, with no stipulations, what do they argue?
But yes, I was striking, whereas there are concerns about safety and security surrounding.
I'm just saying, strike it all.
Well, I think we need to be clear why we're doing this still. We're not just, oh, let's throw a moratorium. Yeah, why not?
Mr. President,
Yes.
can we keep the paragraph that reads, whereas the city council wishes to study the current planning and zoning ordinances and also the business regulation and site of the city in order to determine appropriate location and regulation of small box discount stores within the context of the city's ordinance. But strike the next paragraph that talks about the wishes to study the impact of these types of stores relative to the increasing traffic, changing traffic patterns, the need for extra turning lanes, safety issues, noise, litter, hours of operations, because I don't think we have the funding or the manpower to do such a large study for Andrews Road to answer all of those questions.
Well, it doesn't require us to have an official study. Simply that we want to discuss that. And I think it's important that we are also having discussions over whether the regulations need to be adopted that regulate the architectural details for these types of buildings and other buildings that will be located in the city's commercial corridor. I think that part is still very valid.
Right.
So I have no issue with whether we need, with leaving in. Whether these stores have an impact on traffic, change in traffic patterns, whether we might need a traffic lane there. I mean, those are still things we can be discussing. We don't have to have an official traffic study done.
Okay.
That would be something we would require somebody who's building there to do, though.
Right.
Right.
And I just didn't want us to have to absorb the cost of that because.
Well, there's no requirement that we do it, just because we say. Because we can wish for a lot of things.
Never had.
Like, I wish this meeting was over at 8 o'clock, but it clearly isn't, so we go with, that. Anybody else?
What's our proposal?
My proposal is to strike all the whereases above, whereas in accordance with the Constitution of the State of Ohio.
Top 9.
All right, that's my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Mr. Shaboo,
Yes.
Mr. Morse,
Abstain.
Mr. Bittner,
Sure, yeah.
Lunder,
No.
Thompson.
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
and I am an I as well. Okay. We will strike those, but not strike bottom, however many there are there. Okay. Okay, anything under the definition of small box discount store shall be defined as a retail store between 5,000 and 15,000 square feet, et cetera, et cetera.
How does this definition compare to Mr. Lyons?
It says up to 15,000 square feet, I think.
Doesn't say 5 to 15.
I don't think so. Does it?
Well, it goes under whereas, small discount stores means a retail variety or discount store up to 15,000 square feet to sell at retail direct to the blah, blah, blah. That part though. 21st whereas. That was struck.
We may have in the city already, small box, some sort of discount stores that are under 5,000. That, what about that we have a fairly new one? Are we stating that
Fairly
we
new
don't
one.
want them there?
Susie?
Yes. I think that's the concern about going under 5,000.
So you're talking about the scratch and dent can store that's in food, so. Small
I'm
box
just-
discount stores do not include small box stores that primarily sell specialty food items or daily variety. Or their similar items, similar food items.
So they qualify for that, would they?
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is all be further than what we have. We don't want more. What's here is here. We don't want more. I think that's what we're all.
Okay. Anything? So we're good with adding that in? As it's written there? Okay, well. That wraps up the moratorium, and if there's nothing else on the moratorium for tonight. Last call.
Are you gonna submit that to Mr. Lyons for redraft of the moratorium?
So what are we reading going on? Second stuff?
Second.
No, we're on third reading next.
The moratorium?
Yes.
I thought we put it went into committee and stopped it.
Yeah.
Was it?
It wasn't out one second.
No.
Okay. Do you think we could have it ready for the next council?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
All right. We are not gonna talk about CRA tonight. We're gonna save that for another fun-filled meeting, because that's gonna be a longer one. Anything else?
Big fork.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So maybe.
Second.
A bit of depth.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
No. Yes.
Can't change it. You just said no. Lunder.
No, it's a mistake.
You could do
Aye.
that.
Thompson. Moore. Johnson.
Probably want to stay.
All right, we are adjourned.
We're all staying.